some kind of upscale bedding stores in Bay Area and stuff, and they do a lot of online sales, like a lot of online sales. So Christian manages them. He's the no, it's not that far. It's like he's the operations manager. So he does a lot of staffing. He does a lot of picking up the slack when there's no enough customer support on orders and stuff. And so he moved their office to Cuneo and started hiring people he knew that were trustworthy people, and the business was just growing. And the office is still standing, but no one can get into work. You have to drive some crazy route to get there, and then a lot of the workforce got burnt out along with Christian and Katie, and so they're all in various different places. And so he was trying to figure out, how do I get my people back to work? How do I get people to not be working on the laptop from their parents' house and get them income and all that? And so he started talking to my sister,
Get out of here!
who owns one or two companies here in town, and it turns out no, she's since changed jobs. This guy's name is Dan, and he is the developer on Miriam Park. I don't know, so I don't know. I know t-shirt guy. Yeah, exactly. So he's shifting gears on Miriam Park to try and get some of the places that already have plumbing and electric runs to the plot to have trailer hookups put in, so that before a house can even get built off the pad, so you could still build a house there, someone could stay in a trailer on their property that they will one day get a house at, and then they'll have somewhere that's their own. They can start, investing time and get some progress on their house done. And so he's changed priorities. Originally, he was only going to give priority purchasing for plots to people who wanted to put in businesses in Miriam Park's little business area. And so now he's making it so there's two priority lists: business owners and people who are burned out of their homes up there. And Katie and Christian are both. They're going to move their office into Miriam Park, and they're going to build a house in Miriam Park. So they already grabbed a trailer. They're in LA right now. We're going to go visit them, but in the next few weeks they get to come back up, park a trailer on their plot, start figuring out what kind of house they want to build. They're going to build their office in Miriam Park.
Is that pretty close to happening?
The buildings are mostly built. They're almost done. At least the one Christian would use. And so what Dan said, he just hit it off so good. He said, well, I got some spare cubicles in the t-shirt company. Why don't you bring in your workforce and you just rent-free, plop down, and just work out of our back office until we get your place finished. So it's just like the craziest set of circumstances, but it's all facilitated by him, the one guy. He's making it all happen. So, pretty cool stuff.
That guy has a lot right across from him.
Oh, cool. See, it's such a tight community, and I don't even know the half of it. You know what I mean?
So, crazy stuff. Okay, so I realized I learned something new today, that when communicating with Isaac, I need to be very specific, so I'm covering for him up here.
I thought Whitney was covering up here.
No, Whitney covered for first, so here.
She's not doing second
So
service.
Dick was down there, and I was like, what's going on? I just told you, like, Thursday, Dick.
Yeah, it makes so much more sense
Yeah, it
now.
makes more sense.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what he told me last night, because he bumped into me, he said, I can't make it tomorrow, but don't worry, I got Jamie and Whitney covered.
Yeah.
So I saw first service, never mentioned you to her,
Yeah.
and just assumed
She was gonna do second.
that she was first, you were both second.
Yeah.
That, like, you were and her were going to cover both, but you couldn't make first, so you were only going to come in on second.
Yeah. So basically.
But now it's you minus her second.
Yeah. So basically,
Okay.
what happened with me too is it got crazy for me because he didn't specify whether it was the children's ministry or up here because I'm authorized in both.
Yeah.
So I just assumed because I forgot that he did Sundays because I usually only see him.
You're
do
not here on
Wednesdays.
Sundays, so when would you?
Yeah, and I mean I remember when Dick was talking to me. Oh wait a minute, he does Sundays up there too. But Dick was, but like I told Dick, I think it was like on Thursday. I was like, oh yeah, you don't have to come in. And so it was good because Dick came in anyways and forgot all about it. And it would have been terrible if not, because he's like, yeah, I talked with Jacob again after we had the conversation. Jacob's like, no, you're on. And then I got a phone call randomly from Jacob on a Friday morning or something. I tried to call him back, but he's so busy. And like I texted him, and he just never got back to me. I was like, do you need something? But he was probably trying to straighten the whole deal out. But I just need to know in the future that I gotta tell Isaac you gotta
specify where I'm covering.
Like, yeah, if I'm covering junior high or
He probably didn't think of you as being a children's ministry guy ever, so he probably didn't think he had to specify.
Yeah.
Because he's in both worlds, you're thinking you're only in one.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh, cool. You're here.
Yeah, I'll get you
We
some
got you.
songs. Yeah, how many do you do on Sundays? Same amount, probably?
Usually like 3.
Okay, sounds good. I'll get you some songs here. Actually, we still got a little bit of time, right, Daniel?
Like about 8 minutes.
8 minutes? Yeah, because
I try to start 15 after.
I have about 3 songs downstairs that I was going to do down there, and I have them all printed out, so
Okay,
I'm
cool.
going to grab them.
Right on.
I had a few extra because they do 5. So, Ryden's going to stay up through worship, then I'm taking him to his class.
Okay.
Or not.
Alright.
Oh, get out of here. Oh, get out of here.
I'm so celebrating. It's 10
Oh, you got it. Oh, get out of here. I just want to win. I got I'm playing one. No, I'm playing. You wouldn't win. You die. Summer. I'm playing.
You're not that good. But I need to win this really quick. But I'm scared to talk to you about this. Fine, okay, Shantae. Ow!
Oh no, I didn't see you. No, I can't make it.
Oh, snap!
You know it'd be fun. Oh, hey, you know what'd be fun? All Samus's.
Samus dodgeball, where you can only use the ball, the power ball, and it's got twice the jump track, twice the jump track, and damage.
So, truthfully, it is pretty quick to make it.
Oh, get him. Get him.
No, no, you did not. I saw 3 lives.
You could actually see the
So,
movement.
wow.
You stop
Yeah,
it.
it'll smell like bacon burgers.
My dad is so annoying.
I have to admit, you guys are
Yes, right after church.
actually, I
Bro, killing me.
Wait, this is
By
happening.
driving multiple cars at the same software on
Well,
the same
everyone has
system,
one up.
they can accrue hours faster and quicker because there's multiple cars driving at all times.
I don't like you. Oh.
Caleb, no! Oh, look, no, which one are you down?
It's to get
Well, no, I know
benefits.
that, I
To
know
get
that.
benefits.
Yeah, yeah, but.
Oh, Caleb!
Wait, what?
Caleb! Come here! Come here,
How
Caleb!
are you hitting?
My secret.
So that's the other thing that scares me is
No
that
one's
they
else.
don't
They have to
Oh,
go like this.
Caleb.
So like all of Google's cars are mostly
Yeah, same.
like they haven't been out into the mountains, they haven't been out into like these other environments.
GG!
Where the site is different. And so I think there's probably little glitches.
And they
And
drive off,
haven't gone
they
up
drive
yet.
off the road and, Forest Highway 12 on the water roads. And they take them because they're 40 minutes faster.
Wait, hold it. Back out. Back up.
In Tennessee, we
Back
use
up.
the shuttle.
Someone else
Like,
needs to
when I
do
was a
it.
kid, because I grew up in Colorado once as a kid.
Oh,
And you're not
stop.
driving. You know, you're just in the back. So I never noticed like how different
Thank
the
you.
signage was, how different road markers were,
Stop
how
it.
different lines on roads were. Like, I never thought about that as a kid, but then when you're actually driving a car, and you look at all those
Good
things,
enough.
and it just hit me like, wow, every state has like these kind of noticeable differences about how they do
All
signage,
one
markers,
day.
and road lines, and
Yeah,
stuff.
like,
It's
you
not
know.
the same across all the countries. And I just wondered, like,
Yeah, no one's forgetting.
yeah, there's that too.
I'd be all for it, I'd be all for it if it's all the way across, but the only problem is the government is gonna
They do need to do, I think, a lot more testing on emergency situations.
And in the car, it's like this.
Or driving somewhere, and there's like a lane closed all of a sudden, how's it going to That's the If they don't know a lane's closed, there's some worker in
I
that.
forgot you could do that. That's the most annoying thing ever.
That's
What?
I think where it's going to take is when the car is so specialized, such an expert at driving, is that it's going to send you to people who are like, okay, it's not good. And they just end up in a rap competition.
I think we'll see it.
On the trip, it made me more about
Because it's kind of
Come
like
here.
when they're
Come along. Thank you.
and stuff like that.
Come here.
It's like
Come
they're
along. Oh, Caleb.
cars don't fail, and it's like people's fault or whatever.
I remember when I did it for Popover and I like
Oh, no, I didn't care. I don't like that.
and now I can actually do it.
I'm all, I got everything set up, you know, I'll turn it on, you can keep doing what you're doing, I'll turn it on and get it set up.
Well, since the trimester's over, I'm starting another one. I'm starting a different class.
They have a little stash of ingredients.
Oh.
I think she like didn't have
And
like
then,
so that's fine. It's a very
and then
little
like,
last. We just turn it where it was.
and like everything else is just like, how can you afford that? And then, and I paid for it. He might go to, at the price I said, oh yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, and I wanted to
Hey
be.
guys, there's bacon over here. If anyone wants the bacon.
Nobody likes bacon.
I need a pancake.
Green.
I need a bacon.
Come on, Caleb.
Hey, Ryden. Go up there for one here. Ryden, look at, go up there for one. Hey, Ryden.
Hello.
Ryden. Put your controller down, go get a piece. You're right. Put your controller down and go get a piece, okay?
So that was like the
Go get a piece, son. Daniel asked. So you just ask him. Huh? You don't need to come over. He just said there's no.
Caleb. No.
It's listed for 24 hours.
Maybe it's just for business owners. Like just for people who like
So annoying. Please stop.
No!
So just a picture.
testing, testing. Girls do a standing back yet?
Steal my kill.
We're like the only girls here. Other than
Whoa.
Should I show you? That this old man still can do stuff?
something crazy. Yeah, he kept on saying,
thievery. It's
See
banished.
what happens when you don't obey the rules?
Fine, I won't touch them things. Seth, you just got tackled.
Ah, no, you shouldn't have it.
How did it feel to be taken down by your own teacher?
Hey Daniel, on He Who Began a Good Work in You, it's funny because I keep finding this out. Ken liked to pull parts of songs out and put them into the computer. The whole second part of that song, I'm not going to be doing, but I will be going back and learning because it's a good song. It's just, I always thought too, I was like, man, why is this so short? It's just like a verse and a chorus or something. Or, I mean, there's like a bridge and stuff, but it's like so short it all flows together. And it's like, it seems like there should be more to the song. I looked on your computer and there's more to
You
the
have
song.
the rest of it. That's
There's
funny.
quite a bit more, yeah.
That's pretty cool. Oh yeah, by the way, we upgraded our CCLI account this year. And so if you want to log in, we can be able to log into all the worship leaders. They do chord sheets.
Cool.
They do auto transposing.
I would definitely like to log in.
Okay, I'll send an invite to your email.
That's awesome. Okay, thank you. Can we log in remotely to it also? Or
It's
no?
just a website.
Oh,
You just get to it on any browser.
that's amazing.
If you memorize your login.
Yeah, I'll do that. That's awesome. Oh, do they like script a login or something?
No, it's just a normal login, like a normal website.
Well, can we make up our own like sign in?
Yeah, I just invite you from the master account.
Yeah.
And then you get like a link in your email.
Cool.
And you click it and just set up your own account.
That's really cool.
And then it just knows you're part of our church.
That's awesome. That's exciting because now I don't have to go look at it and I don't have to question, oh, is it the way they wrote it or not? They just got it in PDF.
Yeah, it's the real song.
That was almost a side shot. Oh.
It's weird because I'm not telling you right handed and I use my left foot for my split foot. My
I'm gonna do anything there.
no, my right leg for my split and my left
Yeah.
leg for
Stop.
everything else. You want to see my back leg? You feel like back on my yeah. Wait, this is my back leg.
Oh, that's
Like
different.
cartwheel.
Fun.
Testing.
I don't know. I didn't hear the tap.
Oh,
There we go.
testing.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, we're good. Can you, I went out there. I could hear the speakers working, but they're all sideways. So
Yeah. All right, guys, find a seat. Grab a Bible.
What do you want to say, Gil? That's a good idea.
And yesterday, and I was number 13. I went on page Proverbs 13. Why did everything have the name 13 in it?
yeah, I don't know if that's true.
Like, I went to Dutch Bros and it had the number 13 on my cup, and then now I went to Proverbs 13. It's just like, what is up
Maybe
with that?
God's trying to tell you
Maybe
something about
13 is a lucky number.
But I'm 13.
That's what
It's just a very uneven
Yeah,
lucky
nobody-
that
number.
would be my first clue.
My lucky
Is
number
if I
7.
see something over
Dang,
and over and over,
I got everything.
I say
when I
God's
was
trying to
about
tell me
7
something.
and 6.
That's
On
what
the
I
trampoline,
do.
obviously. Can't find the same time.
Alrighty. Okay, guys. Well, I will pray and then we will get started worshiping the Lord together. So, Lord, thank you for everybody that you brought here this morning. I pray that as sickness is going around, as tragedies happen, Lord, I pray that you would be with people. I pray that when these kind of things happen, Lord, what happened up in Paradise, I pray that I am so grateful that the community is coming together and we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're showing each other practical love, Lord. But I pray that always in our hearts and in our minds, it would always get us to remember what's important in life, and that you would help us to be Jesus to those who have lost, Lord, but also that you'd speak clearly to those who have lost things. And that they would remember that as long as they have you in their life and in their heart, Lord, that everything's going to be okay. Because just like King Solomon said, people can be dressed in the finest array, but none of them are like any of your flowers or the beauty of your creation, Lord. So, and also you take care of the birds of the air. So, don't we think that you'd notice even if one hair on our head falls, Lord? So we know that you know us intimately. You've created us before time began, Lord, in your mind. And I pray that we would take your word seriously and the things you'd have for our lives seriously. I pray that you bless each and every individual here today, Lord, and that you'd bring us closer to you through things that happen in our life, whether they be tragic, whether they be wonderful, Lord. That it would always, our heart would always be to grow closer to you through everything and learn more about you. So I thank you for every person you brought here, and I pray that we could worship you now, and I thank you that we can really truly worship you through the gift of life that Jesus gave us on the cross, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. You guys could stand with me. We're going to sing Let Everything. Let everything down. Let everything down. Let everything that has breath praise the Lord. Let everything down. Let everything down. Let everything that has breath praise the Lord. Let everything down. Let everything down. Let everything that has breath praise the Lord. Let everything down. Let everything down. Let everything that has breath praise the Lord. We're going to sing praise you in the morning. Praise you in the morning. Praise you in the evening. Praise you when I'm young and when I'm old. Praise you when I'm laughing. Praise you when I'm grieving. Praise you every season of the storm. If we could see how much Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth, oh Lord, how majestic is your name. The sun, the earth, the moon, the stars you hold in place, the mighty work of your hand and for your grace. And we sing, Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth, oh Lord, how majestic is your name. Oh Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth, oh Lord, how majestic is your name. Oh, what joy, oh, what joy to know the ruler of all things. We come to bow and serve the King above all kings. And we sing, Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth, oh Lord, how majestic is your name. Oh Lord, how majestic is your name. Thank you once again, Lord, for your holy name and your holy word. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Jamie.
No problem.
All right, guys, if you don't have your Bibles with you, go ahead and grab one off the shelf. It's time to get started. Once you got a Bible, open it up to the book of Mark, chapter 7. We're starting halfway through. I think it was verse 24, if I'm not mistaken. Should be page 836.
We lost all the guys.
I know. Usually, if people disappear to the restroom all together at once, it's not the guys. Very unusual. 2005? The movie?
No.
Oh yeah.
I asked how old she was, and then she said,
Wait, I asked myself how old I was. How old am I? Oh wait, I'm 11.
and then she said, how old are you? And I said 13. She said, you don't look like you're 13. And I'm like, I turned 13 a month ago too. Yeah.
Born in 2005. Now I get it. I just misheard you. I thought you said the phrase, have you seen 2005? Have you
Yeah,
seen
I
2005?
wouldn't
I was like,
even-
there's a movie? There was actually a movie called 2012, but I don't remember there being a movie 2005.
Oh, unless you're talking about Titanic, then I'm totally
What
not.
was 2012 about?
Like the end of the world.
Yeah.
What?
Oh God,
Oh,
no.
But we've already been through
Oh.
2012.
Right, but they released the movie in early 2012.
Oh.
So
Yeah, it's an old movie
They
now.
thought
The
we would
date
all die in
is
2012.
accurate.
In 2012.
There was like some Mayan calendar where like they dug it up, archaeologists found it, and it was like a ridiculous calendar. It was made hundreds of years ago, and it was made out hundreds of years in advance. So like they had dates on the calendar all the way out until
2012.
2012, and then the calendar stopped. And so people were like, why did they end the calendar in 2012? That's a random,
We're all gonna die.
weird year. And they thought, that must mean there's no need for a calendar after 2012 because there's no more world. That's logic right there, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Or they
every
just
year I
didn't-
hang a calendar on my wall and it's got like December and then it's over. Maybe that's because the calendar makers know something I don't know.
no.
Or they were just going to make a new calendar.
Or
like
they're
the
just
2012.
stupid.
Wow.
Or because it was made out of
Just
stone.
doesn't know when it's gonna
It was made out
happen.
of stone. Maybe they just got tired of making a calendar out of stone.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know what, we're 500 years out in advance, we're good. We don't need to go any further.
Just
Too
sit
much
here
further than
till
that, it gets
2012.
annoying. Yeah.
Okay, you get a gigantic stone
Chapter
in
7, verse 24.
thing that.
Did I?
Okay, then.
I meant to say 24, but I didn't say
Calendar.
24, I'm sorry.
424?
No,
Oh,
724.
Yeah, 724.
724. So page 836 if you're in the borrowed blue Bible.
What?
Page
What?
836. 836.
Oh, I think I went past it. No, I'm still at.
No, you're not. I can
Hey,
tell
I
just
got
from the number of
834.
pages on your right and left. You were darn close.
36.
Yeah, we've been in Merc for a few weeks now, so you should have a bit of a crease in the binding
Don't
there.
correct me on the
All right, so a
What chapter?
chapter ago, chapter 7. We're in verse 24 though, so it'll be the next page.
What page?
Page
24.
836. I thought we did this already. No? Okay.
820.
Nope, 30. 836.
Okay, 836.
There you go, you're good.
First you said 8:35.
Nope. Nope.
And
Nope.
then I'm like,
I said 36.
and it sounded like that.
So, a chapter ago, we were looking at Jesus trying to get his disciples off on a vacation, trying to get them some rest. They had been on the road, they were tired. A lot of their ministry involved plunking down in a house in a new town, and then that house would get mobbed by people, like all day, sometimes all night. They wouldn't get rest. So Jesus already tried once to take them on a vacation, and it didn't work. They got there, and there were thousands of people who had guessed where they were going and got there first. So now we get to chapter 7, and halfway through, we're going to have Jesus' second try. He's going to actually go so far as to leave the country, which he doesn't really do much. He mostly just stays in Israel while he's here. So he tries to leave the country. We're going to start out in verse 24. Connie, would you read that verse for us?
Then Jesus left Galilee and went north to the region of Tyre. Did I say that right?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't want anyone to know which house he was staying in, but he couldn't keep it a secret.
Verse 25.
Right away, a woman who had heard about him came and fell at his feet. Her little girl was possessed by an evil spirit.
Anna? 26.
The woman was a Greek, a Syrophoenician by birth, and she kept asking him to cast out the demon from her daughter.
Jesus told her, "First I should feed the children of my own family, the Jews. It isn't right to take food from the children and throw it to the dogs."
Okay, pause there. Now, based on your translation, it may say Greek, it may say Gentile. If we're being more generic, it's Gentile. More specific, it's Greek. It's not a contradiction. One's just a bigger group than the other group. Does anyone know what Greek means?
No.
Anyone know what
Gentile.
Greek means? No! I know, it was a good guess.
It was a good guess
It was
because
a
I
great
thought
guess.
somebody said it the last time, and I was like, okay, so it's
So Greek
This.
means you come from Greece. You come from the country of Greece. There is a country called that, if you didn't know. It's not spelled the same as the grease you use to oil something. But if you come from Greece, you're Greek. If your parents were from Greece, then you'd still be considered Greek in their culture. You didn't have to be born in the country. You just had to have Greek parents. So, she's Greek. Now, what does Gentile mean? Because most of our translations, we're holding your NLT, so that's going to say Gentile. What's Gentile mean? You gotta actually look up if you want to see my finger pointing at you, calling on you as you raise your hand.
Oh.
Hi! What's Gentile mean?
Born in Syrian Phoenicia.
Good guess, but no. Yes.
Is it really, is the guess, is it gentle?
No, that is a
I
good
don't know,
guess.
it sounded like-
It looks like the word gentle, but no.
I don't
Yes.
know gentle, so I don't know.
Doesn't Gentile mean you're not a Jew?
Yeah,
Anyone
that's
but
it.
a Jew.
So Jew is a very small group. That's just those people, the Israelites. However, they had a word for outsiders. It was a word for people who weren't from their country. Gentile means all the countries that aren't their country, all the people that aren't their people. Does that make sense? There's only two groups. There's the Jews and the Gentiles. Literally, it's a fancy word. It means everybody but us.
Aw,
That's it.
too bad.
So when they call her Gentile in this translation, they're being very generic, because that's almost everyone on the planet. Almost everyone on the planet is a Gentile. And then in the other translation, they're being very specific. She had Greek parents. Yes.
I thought for some reason you were gonna say everybody on the planet was gonna be a dog or an animal. Like that doesn't make any sense.
You got really close to it, actually. This is weird, okay? Because the next factoid I need to tell you. I know, you're going, what? No, the next factoid is this. Jesus doesn't call this analogy out of nowhere. He doesn't just create the children dog analogy that he uses. This comes from, I kid you not, the racial slurs of the day. He was riffing, he was making a polite joke out of the very impolite mean names that people called each other back then.
Why would no?
Just
no.
wait for it. Just wait for it. It's really
No.
interesting. So at this point in history, the Jews would, to your face, if you were a Gentile, maybe they'd call you a Gentile.
Gentiles.
Literally a word that means you're not one of us. But But behind your back, they wouldn't be that polite. They would call you a dog.
What? That's so
I'm not even
mean.
kidding. This is the nickname, but an offensive one.
That's so
For people
mean.
not from their country was a dog. Now
Why can't they just be
Jesus
puppies?
in the English says dog. Okay. English says dog. But in the Greek he doesn't use in the Greek he doesn't use the offensive word. In the Greek he doesn't say bunch of dogs. He doesn't say pack of wolves. He says cute little puppy.
Wait, seriously.
You have a
Seriously,
puppy?
that's what he says.
He
So
actually
look
says
at
cute little puppy.
cute little puppy. So it's one word, but yeah. Look at what it says. It says, it isn't right to take food from the children and throw it to the puppies. That's much cuter sounding.
Yeah.
And he avoids using the word that is offensive. Does that make sense?
No,
he
in
avoids
ours
using the
it
word
says
that...
dog.
Well, in English, but Jesus didn't speak English, okay? You gotta
What?
follow me on this.
What?
This book you're reading was translated from the original book. The original book was actually written in ancient Greek, not in English. Because in their part of the world, they'd never heard of English. It didn't even exist to them yet.
What's
Okay,
in
so,
English?
come again?
Did you just say what's in English?
What's in English? All right, so Jesus says this little thing about puppies. Now, imagine the scenario outside of culture, outside of context. Don't think about Israelites or Jews or Gentiles or racial slurs or any of that, okay? Forget all of that nonsense for a moment. Focus for just this one little thought. Imagine you have a baby and you also have a puppy. They're both yours. They're yours to look after, to take care of. But you realize one day you're not going to have enough money to keep feeding them both.
Get rid of the kid. I know what I'd pick.
What would you pick?
I think I'd keep the child.
No,
What
I
would
get
you-
the dog.
What would
and
you
say
do
goodbye.
about the puppy? Would you
I'd probably try
starve
to
it?
No, I'd try to. I'd probably give it to a shelter that could feed it and whatever.
Find someone to take care of it for you?
Just like give it to the person next door.
No,
You're
no.
free puppy.
Find a good neighbor that you can go visit.
Get rid of the
I know
child.
an idea. Put the child up for adoption and keep the puppy because
Oh.
it's adorable.
See, but that hurts everyone. Right there. If you say that and you think about it, it hurts.
And then like the
Give up
baby,
your child to keep a puppy.
and then the baby
It's
grows up. It's like
adorable.
my parents didn't love me. What the
Okay,
heck?
Yeah.
what
It
if,
hurts
what
when you
if
think
the
about that.
child
No.
half dog and half
No bad hypothetical situations. This is the real one. This is the one Jesus uses. Now, you've got that in your head, okay? And this is all Jesus' point was. It's nothing against puppies. It's not that the puppy's a bad thing. It's not that the puppy's unloved. It's not that he doesn't want the puppy or like the puppy. It's purely that, one, you have a major responsibility, and it would be
Human.
odd, bordering on wrong, to give that responsibility to someone else. But the puppy, not so. The puppy could be raised by any loving owner and it would still work out. Now, what is he talking about? He's talking about a two-way relationship versus a one-way relationship. Does that make sense?
No.
The puppy is owned by someone. The child has a parent, and that's a relationship in one
child's a
direction.
slave.
And the parent has a child. That's a relationship the other direction. Here's the analogy backwards, though. He's saying the Jews are my people. Likewise, Jesus himself, when he was born on this earth as a human, was a Jew. So
Dun, dun, dun.
he is one of them, as they are his kids, because he's God. They're his chosen people.
So he gave birth to all of them.
Well, not like that, but they're his chosen people. So they are a little bit different, a little bit special compared to everything else. And it's not as though Jesus is saying, never shall I help out the Gentiles. What does he say? He says, first I should feed my children. First I go to the Jews. You guys know, if you've read the rest of the Bible, you get past this chapter and keep going. There's eventually a very large portion devoted to the fact that Christianity, that God, that Jesus is for everyone, not just the Jews. That becomes really obvious as you keep reading. So he's not saying that the Jews are the only ones who get him. He's saying they get him first. That's it. They get him first. Once they have him, then everyone else can too. Yeah.
I just thought of something. Would you rather drop a iPhone X that's diamond studded off a cliff or a kitten?
The diamonds set an iPhone every single time. Diamonds are good and strong. They'll protect the iPhone. So
And
Kittens are adorable too.
you gotta think these things.
wait, no. Colin thinks it's
Now it was a diamond studded kitten.
I was born
It's a whole nother story.
Think your pal.
It's a whole nother story.
That kid was
yeah, they
that's
have
me.
no idea.
Make a
$40
crater
like
of the
that.
phone.
I just don't say.
All right, guys.
At least that's
Thank you, by the way, for
fine.
washing everyone's brain. They didn't need to think about good stuff anyways. All right, so what do you think she's going to say? She just got called a puppy.
I already read ahead.
You already read ahead, so good. Now let's all read ahead.
Off a cliff.
Who just read? Was it you or you?
That one.
It's me.
You okay, your
Oh
turn.
no.
She outed you. Verse 28.
So rude.
You get the cool verse.
Okay. She replied, "That's true, Lord, but even the dogs under the table are allowed to eat the scraps from the children's plates."
Good job.
Booyah! Not yeah, because that's just.
Good answer, he said. Now go home, for the demon has left your daughter. And
Oh, pause. That was it. That was your whole verse. She's got 30.
and when she arrived home, she found her little girl lying quietly in bed, and the demon was gone.
Booyah.
It seems wrong to leave it at and.
Yeah.
Because
Well, no,
and.
the and was her verse.
Yeah, I know. It just
Oh.
seems wrong. Because, and. That doesn't go on. It just doesn't make
That's
any
actually
sense.
something that someone does say sometimes if they
And-
want the next person to get going and do their part.
And.
All right, so this is cool. This is one of like 2 instances I can recall where someone gives Jesus a parable. It's really rare. Usually Jesus is the guy handing out parables, but she gives him one. He says it's not right to feed the dogs before the children. She says, yeah, but even a dog can eat scraps off a kid's plate. And then what does he say? He says, good answer. That's a great answer. And so essentially what he's saying is, I didn't come here to minister to the Gentiles. I came to Tyre to rest. I knew I would find less Jews here because it's outside of their country. So I came here to rest. She, being a Gentile, says, but since you're here, can I have a scrap? And he says, yeah, that's a good answer. You can have a scrap. Yes.
So Jesus called her a puppy?
Yes.
And then she
Okay.
got so
It's
mad.
like, okay, I can handle that. Yeah.
Okay, so technically, here's the part I'm not getting.
Okay.
So he says, okay, well, I'm gonna go back to my place, feed my children, I'll come back and feed you guys. Right?
Kind
But,
of.
kind of, she
I'll
throws a
explain.
parable at him. He's like, yeah, that's cool. Okay, goodbye. You got
You get your
what you
scraps.
needed. You can go now.
Yeah, so remember, he's been healing people nonstop for days and days and days and days and days. He needs a break. He goes there, she comes and asks for him healing. He says, it's my day off.
I'm tired. Leave me
I'm
alone.
tired. I'm on vacation. And then she says, can I just get a scrap? And he says, okay.
But still, he's not like.
He's not going to stand there and teach for 5 hours. He's not going to, go door to door and see
But
who
I
needs
thought
help.
Jesus was like always like he didn't.
But he was in a human body.
Oh right, so he did get tired.
Yeah. He got tempted, he got tired, he got hungry just like everybody else. He is perfect though, and so he managed it better than anybody else. Sometimes when he was starving, he'd go off and pray, and then that would be it. He wouldn't eat food, he would just keep going.
Jesus didn't get hangry.
He didn't get hangry, but he did get hungry. So, yeah, he handled it better than everybody else, but he was still human. He still had all the
But
things
then he
going on.
called someone
Say that one more time.
But then didn't he call
Her?
her a puppy, which is rude?
No, the dog comment is rude. He was twisting the rude thing into a
Oh.
cute thing to make an analogy.
To make it sound a little better, but it was still technically supposed to be.
We should
rude.
start.
I don't think it was supposed to be rude to call someone a puppy. I don't think so.
We're dogs.
Cute and little, not usually an insult against a woman. Not usually.
Dogs are
Depends on the woman. Some
Kinda
would
like
be
when
good
you
at.
call
Oh,
someone-
don't call it.
Kinda like when you call someone poopsie.
A
You-
poopsie?
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 Yeah.
Why would you call someone a poopsie?
That's just,
Because they
that's
spell.
just
If you call it
weird,
poopsie, it's
gross,
kinda
and rude.
Oh, I see what you're
Mixed
getting
in
at.
one.
The difference between calling someone a poop and a poopsie is that one is tiny and cute.
No. None of
If
them are
you get
cute.
called a poop, you get angry. So you get called a poopsie, you laugh. There's a difference.
Like if someone calls you
Oh,
snot,
I
you
laughed
sugar
either
booger.
way.
Ah, I see what you're doing. Yeah,
laugh
she
either
said the
way.
difference between snot and sugar booger. These are.
It's
It's a
something really
minute
gross,
difference,
something
but
really
there
cute.
is a difference.
One of them is just gross, and the other is embarrassing if you get called
Cute
that
and
in front
gross.
of your friends.
If
We're
your
gonna-
mom's
we're
like,
gonna
No,
say
no,
that.
no, no. No,
You're like,
just
"Mom,
realize
The
how.
fact that she
never really comes close to really insulting anyone. I mean, I guess other than the Pharisees. but for the most part, he doesn't go around insulting people. But the fact that he knows this woman and he knows the response that she's gonna give him already.
Yeah.
I think that he took that step to insult her and allow her to just accept it with so much humility and even call herself that back and
kind of own it.
Use her as an example to us of humbling ourselves, because I think that's the hardest thing. Like you can insult yourself and you can humble yourself, but when someone else insults you, it harder. It's harder to own that and just be like, okay, I'm just gonna humble myself. And
Jesus.
I think that he might have called her that to allow her to show her heart and then to bless her because of it.
It's interesting because whether you take it as an insult or not is based on the receiver. Because in this case, it's actually a truth. He's handing her a truth, and that is, you're not part of this family. You're not part of this group that God's chosen to use. And so there's a truth in that. And she can take it as an insult. She can get offended and hurt and walk away. Or she can realize the truth of it. I am not part of that family. I was born into something else. And so we always have that opportunity. If someone you know who's close to you says, you know what? You talk too much.
Goodbye.
Yes.
That's me.
Like, it cuts you. It doesn't matter that it's true. You would think if someone just told you something that was true about yourself, you would just say thank you and try and improve yourself and walk away. Like when someone says your shirt tag is sticking out, it doesn't hurt you.
Or your breath smells bad.
Or your breath smells. That actually does kind of hurt.
I know, it does. Just like for the entire
But it
body.
shouldn't. It should just make you go, oh, okay, I'll get a mint, or I'll brush my teeth, or I'll find some gum, or like that's all it should do. But we can take it as so much more than that.
Quick.
And that is true. You can humble yourself, and that moves you in a better direction. Or your pride kicks in. And you're like, they were so mean to say that. That's stupid. Why are they calling
And then
me
you have to,
stupid?"
and then you have to, like, throw an insult at them. It's like your breath smells bad.
Yeah. Your breath always smells bad.
Worse than mine.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying is I think if she had been the type of person that would have just gone away like feeling insulted and crushed and offended, that he would have worded it differently. But I think he did that exactly so she could respond in the way she did.
It's really cool.
I don't know. I mean, yes, there's where like people can be offended, or like you said, they can walk off. But for me, it's hard for me to like take that and be like, okay, yeah, well, sometimes I'll throw something weird back, or I'll be like, I'll walk away crying, cause like I'm really sensitive on like. So people would like come up and say, oh, you talk too much, or I'd go back and be like, yeah, you know what, you talk too much, and you're stupid for calling me stupid too, so. Or I just walk away crying, and that's mainly what I do.
It's hard because not all the time when we get insulted like that was it ever meant to share truth. A lot of time people say stuff because they wanted to hurt you.
Yeah,
It's next to impossible to take that well.
you can be rude about it or be like me sometimes. This is only something I do sometimes. Is I either throw back a mean remark, or I literally say, okay, yeah, my friend, you are a master of the obvious.
There are ways to take it in stride, and that's a good one, is to just kind of own it. And sometimes it's a good thing to own it. Other times you're just covering up your hurt, and you're hiding behind the act of owning it. Oh, good catch. I think you might win. Anybody else got a phone they want to offer up? No? Okay. All right. Moving on. So he heals her daughter, and he does it in the way only Jesus can. He doesn't go there. He doesn't put his hands on the girl. He doesn't pray. He doesn't wave a magic wand. He just says, she's healed. And she's healed. That's it.
They don't have to go bippity boppity boop, okay?
Well, and this is cool to think about. This lady is a Gentile. She's from an even further away place than this place where they bumped into each other. And somehow she's heard enough about Jesus. She found out enough about Jesus that she has the level of faith that when he says, go home, your daughter's healed, she doesn't say, no, you have to come. I won't leave you alone until you come see her. Like he says, go home, she's healed, and she just goes home. That's like a large amount of faith to just walk away from Jesus after he said the miracle has occurred, but you have no proof. You have no evidence.
Until you go home
we'll
and see
We'll
it.
go left, right. So yes, and then yes. Okay.
Come on.
I'm sorry, I'm a left, right brain. I can't do it.
So it was her daughter that was. Oh, I thought it was her that had the demons in.
No, sorry, her daughter. Yeah, we read that verse early on. We probably didn't repeat it enough. It's this woman's daughter who has a demon. Yes.
This is like a question that was before, and it is kind of about this. Can Jesus read minds and still a human body?
Ooh, very good question. So yeah, he had a lot of powers that human bodies don't typically have. Okay, so there is not a clear-cut list in the Bible where it just says, here's his superpowers. You know what I mean? Like the back of the trading card or something. We just have to read the stories and figure out what he could do. So there are verses where it says, literally, he knew their hearts. Now, it didn't say how. It didn't say how. So it didn't say he could look at their face and just know what was going on inside the head.
Oh no, not me. Look at her. No.
It didn't say. Maybe in that particular instance, God wanted him to know the hearts of those people, so God just sent him the knowledge. Maybe he just knows people's thoughts and can hear them, like they're saying them out loud. Like, we don't get the specific how, but we get the fact that he can. Does that make sense? So in certain verses, it just says he knew their hearts. He knew exactly what they were thinking right then.
If God could do anything, does that mean he could teleport to somewhere?
Yeah, there's actually an instance of it, pre-resurrection once, maybe, where it says they could not find him and he was standing in the middle of the crowd, and then he was no longer in the crowd. Now, again, we don't know the how. Was it God just blocked all their minds from being able to see him and he just walked right out? Or did he teleport? Now, later, once he's been resurrected, so he dies on the cross, comes back to life, and he's in his heavenly body, then we get clear teleportation. Like, absolutely, this is what's happening. Like, he wasn't in the room with them, and then he appeared in the room. And previously, like 5 seconds ago, he was several towns away. So after resurrection, yeah, absolutely, that's exactly what's happening, teleportation. But pre-resurrection, only a maybe.
It would be cool if we could actually do that. It's like, teleportoy, yes.
There's a good chance we will be able to do that once we have our new bodies, because the Bible says that Jesus' new body after the resurrection was the prototype. It was the glimpse at what we will one day get. So there's a chance that that's not just a Jesus only, and that's actually just all resurrection bodies.
Can we also fly?
That'd be cool. Again, same answer. We saw Jesus do it post-resurrection, so there's a good chance we would get that one. Yeah.
Technically, I feel like everything that he was able to do, like the teleportation, is there's a word for it. It's psychocolonius.
I don't think that's the word.
No, it was a
That's
different word.
Psychologically?
No, not psychocolonius. But it was a weird word, and then the one where you said if you could like hear
What does the word
everybody's.
mean?
Technically, the word is supposed to mean like being able to teleport quickly, like just like
a
out of
word
nowhere.
for teleportation. I get it now.
Like, for
Okay.
teleportation.
We can look that up because that actually makes sense
And
now.
then there like the one where he could hear thoughts like
There's a
they
word
were
for that.
saying out like out loud. That's actually called telepathy.
Oh.
And telepathy is a way that like people say that they have it,
Can read minds.
and they can just like they don't even have to look in their face. They can just walk past them and they hear what they thinking,
Telepathy
and then
would
they
be a
just go back.
scary power to have, honestly, because
I know. 'Cause I'm like, what is
the
it?
number of thoughts my brain can have at once and the speed at which I can switch subjects, I think if someone else got inside there, they might just get punched in the brain with the rapid jarring motion of going this way and that way.
It would kind of give you a headache. 'Cause like,
Actually,
so many voices.
I want twice the thoughts in my head. I can barely handle
they
it.
were trying
to walk through crowds.
Yeah,
there was
exactly.
a show I watched. They were
Like you could also say
Telepathy
something.
earmuffs.
You could say something mean about someone in your head, and they like hear it, and you're like,
Hey!
no battery.
All right, part 2. We have part 2. He tries to go on vacation in Tyre. That doesn't work out. So now he's going to try and go on vacation part 2 in the town next door. Up north of Israel, right on the coast, is Tyre. It's on a little peninsula sticking out into the sea.
Tyre.
When you go uphill from there,
Sidon.
you get to
Sidon.
Sidon. So I'll read verse 31, and then we'll just keep going back around again. All right, so verse 31. Jesus left Tyre and went up to Sidon before going back to the Sea of Galilee and the region of the 10 towns.
A deaf man with a speech impediment was brought to him, and the people begged Jesus to lay his hands on the man to heal him.
Jesus led him away from the crowd so they could be alone. He put his fingers into the man's ears. Then he spit on his own fingers and touched the man's tongue.
Oh!
Oh yeah, it gets better.
This is very unsanitary.
Incredibly.
Looking up to heaven, he sighed and said, "You are now sick."
Okay, this word shouldn't exist. PH should never happen in any word. It's a PH then a PH. What this means is there's two F noises. The first F noise comes with the E, F, and then the second F noise comes with the FAFA. So, F-FAFA. And try not to bite your tongue. It means be open. Don't skip that part because you're all making jokes with me. It means be open. Sorry, Hannah, go for it.
Immediately his ears were opened, and the impediment of his tongue was loosed, and he spoke plainly.
Right, pause. I'm sorry. We gotta pause on this. This is wild, okay? I don't think we realize how exactly wild this is. He put his fingers in his ears, and then he spit on them. So now that's earwax and saliva, and then he put that in the guy's mouth. But that's not even the part that's weird. That's normal in comparison to what he actually just did. Okay, now, let's say you're born deaf and you can't hear anything. Why can't you talk?
You've never been able to hear
hearing,
Okay.
speaking. That's why he licked his finger.
Anyone
and then
else?
He put it in his mouth.
Yes?
it's because when you're having hearing impairment, you don't know what you're saying, so you just have to say it how you
That is true of someone who goes
But
deaf
which is why
in the middle of their life. But we're talking about, and you got pretty close to it, someone who's like born deaf?
which means they don't know how to talk. And also,
Yeah.
that's well, if you go deep in the
They
middle,
can't hear
that's why if
anymore.
you put on headphones, turn on really loud music. Sometimes you're yelling when you're speaking.
Yeah, same idea. That's a bit what it would be like to be deaf in the middle of your life. You can't tell what you're saying, so you get the volume wrong.
They can feel the beat of music or something. though.
Yeah, there's other things you could learn. This is the deal, guys. First year of life, 0 to 1, your brain is being programmed. It is a blank computer. That is why babies just kind of wobble and wibble, and they don't even know how to look at you. And they scratch themselves and hurt themselves, and they don't even know why. Like, why does my face hurt? Why does my face hurt more? They have no clue what's going on. They are a blank computer that knows how to program itself. That's a cool miracle of God. But what that means is, if you miss out on something during that first year, it's going to be hard or impossible to learn how to do it later. This is why they have all that research into playing classical music for babies. The idea is not that they learn classical music. The idea is that their brain gets music, so that the music is built in.
Also,
They don't have to be taught it later. They just have to be shown the specifics later. They live and breathe music now. They were raised on it. Same thing with speech. You have a part of your brain that is literally learning what sounds should come out of a human mouth. The whole first year, before they're even able to make a sound come out of their mouth, they know what to expect out of yours. There are syllables that are only in certain languages. You guys have probably made a joke about this once or twice in your life, or heard one about how there's other languages with clicks and pops. And somehow that's funny to us English speakers because our language doesn't have and in our words. Those are in other people's languages. Did you know English has a syllable that no other language has?
What is it?
What?
Did you guys know that?
No, what is
This
it?
is a totally missed out fact. All of us English speakers just take it for granted. We don't realize it's in our language and no other language.
What is it?
It's so hard for other people to learn how to do because of the tongue motion. The tongue motion is distinct from all the other tongue motions, and if they don't use it in their language, which they don't, they end up never exercising their tongue in that particular way. And so when they start to learn English, they can make themselves say it, but their tongue is actually weak in that particular direction, and so it is hard for them to make the sound, and so they shorten, quicken, or weaken the sound. It's the sustained R. Say pirate.
Pirate.
Okay, now say it slow and think about your tongue while you say it. Notice where your tongue goes.
In the middle.
No. Say the pyre. And now pause and don't move your tongue. At the end of the R, where's your tongue?
In the middle. In the middle of your mouth, but it's kind of
It's
back.
touching
Like
way at the back. The tip of your tongue has to reach
Hard.
back into your mouth.
That's weird.
Up top, your tongue is leaning over backwards and holding. And in English, we learn to hold our tongue there as long as we want. We can do it as long as we want. Say, "Arr!" You are swallowing your tongue. You're darn close to it, okay? And in other languages, they don't do that. They have a rolled or a trilled
That's not what I
R
did, it's just
or
R.
a tapped R. Arriba! The tongue goes back and comes right back. Arriba. The tongue is there for a split second. It's the difference between someone who can lift up a barbell and stand there and someone who can throw a ball in the air.
I can totally
The arm's
do
doing the
that.
same motion, but the
yeah,
muscle
sure.
required is completely different. So in another language they might say arriba. They might say something like an R. I don't know if you realize this, but an R and an L are very, very close. Say la 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 la, ra 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 ra. Your tongue is just going further back to make the R than the L. The L is up towards the front, the R is in the back. And so people who come from another place that don't have the sustained R, they will oftentimes change the R for an L as their tongue gets tired. Maybe at the beginning of their speech, they're making the R's connect, they're saying the R's, and then partway through a sentence, their tongue is just going, I can't do this anymore, man. And it's just an L now. The R's are coming out soft as an L. So we have these unique things. Now, you never had to think about that.
Being a pirate.
No one ever told you.
Pilot.
When you say pirate, you gotta get your tongue in the back of your mouth.
Like, oh, okay.
Boat driver.
I
not
don't
a
know.
You
Okay.
just say pirate. You don't think about it. You never had to be
Pilot.
taught how to say R. You just heard someone say R.
My
and then
tongue
you
doesn't go all
did
the
it.
way back.
I can't.
R.
It doesn't feel like our tongues are going back.
Where's
it
your
feels like
tongue?
it's stopping.
Yeah.
R.
It's in my mouth, but like
How far back can your tongue go? Can your tongue go really far back past the R?
I just touched the back of my throat.
Most people don't go much further. Okay. Anyways, everyone's mouth is a little different. We're not going to nitpick. The point is, when you learn to talk, you're programmed without even thinking about it. But if you never get programmed to talk, if you never learn to speak any language, we've done studies on this, guys, it alters the way you think.
Sorry, can't say that.
If you never learn a language, it alters the way you think. And so if a deaf person can get their hands on printed words at a very, very young age, and you teach them to read and to write at a very, very young age, they will think basically normal for the rest of their life. They will think in words, printed words. They will think in written words, in their head. You know how you probably have like an inner monologue and you can think thoughts, and those come up as almost like you talking to yourself. This is built into you naturally by having learned how to speak at a young age. And the older you learn how to speak, the less likely you are to think in words in your own head.
but if you don't know how to pronounce that word, if you're
Then
deaf.
you won't think in speech in your head. If you never pronounce any words, if you never learn any pronunciations, if you never hear speech ever in your life, you don't think in words in your head because you don't even know what they are.
How do you think in your head then?
Well, this is the hard part, and this is a little sad. You think in the language that you do learn, so written, braille, sign, but if you don't learn a language, and there are places in the world where if you're born deaf, no one helps you, you will have a hard time thinking. And it causes people to associate born with deaf with stupidness. And this is where we get that whole dumb means
So that
stupid. Dumb originally meant can't talk. We associated it with you're unintelligent. Because if someone is born deaf and no one gives them another kind of language, no one gives them sign language because they're surrounded by people who don't know sign language. No one forces text into their hands so that they'll get something, then they will have trouble thinking. It's really sad because their brain is fully capable. They can think, but no one taught them to. We don't even realize we're teaching babies how to think. You know what I mean? We just do it automatically. We talk to them. Boom, done. They learn how to think. But if no one can talk to a kid, they have a serious lack going on in their life. Now, in many cultures, we give them something else. We give them sign language, we give them written word, we give them all these things, and it helps them out immensely, and they think like the rest of us. Slightly different, but just as much. However, if you suddenly did a surgery and connected all the nerves right, and made everything function and, healed up what was broken, when they woke up from that surgery, they would not magically know how to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
They're missing the years of education that we all receive kind of automatically. And so this guy, when he gets the ability to speak, is not getting a little nerve connection here, a little healing of the eardrum there. He's not getting tongue dexterity. He's getting a miracle course in speech. Does that make sense? So the miracle here is far more amazing than the earwax plus spit in his mouth.
Is that wait?
Yeah.
Is that why? So he put his finger in his ear, so like hearing, and then in his mouth like talking,
And then he said, be open to both. Both the ability to speak, let your mouth be opened, and the ability to hear, let your ears be opened. And so Jesus does a similar miracle to the one before. He speaks it, and it's so. Before, he didn't go to the woman's house, he didn't pray for her, he didn't lay hands on her daughter, he just said, your daughter's healed. Boom, she was healed. The demon gone. And then he says, this guy, mouth and ears, be open. Ears and mouth, obey. And the parts of his brain that need to learn, what they needed to learn to let him speak, they followed along. It was just, lockstep. We're all marching together now. The brain, the ears, the mouth, it's all going as one. And suddenly it says, look at the phrase, he could speak. Am I on the wrong page? I'm on the wrong page. I knew where it was, just wrong piece of paper. It says he could speak plainly. Plainly, if you aren't familiar with the phrase, speaking plainly means speaking in a way that everyone can understand what you're saying. Speaking in a way that everyone can understand what you're saying. So that tells me he didn't open his mouth and start speaking. Like we've actually heard people who are partially deaf, they can't quite get every sound out because they can't hear themselves. That's becoming deaf like later on in life or learning through really bad hearing. It causes you to not speak quite the same as everyone else. And I love what Jesus did here. He's conquered something most of us are really bad at.
disgusting.
The spit, the earwax is disgusting. But this is, he gave the man a gift. I don't think he's worried too much about the how.
The first thing I would have said if I got hearing and speaking would, you could have just said, I can help.
Ew, first words out of his mouth. Jesus did something for him I think we're all really bad at, and that is being considerate of someone who's not like you. We're pretty bad. If you have a friend who's in a wheelchair and they can't walk, they can't get out of that wheelchair on their own, maybe after a long period of time, you will understand how hard that is for them. Maybe after a long period of time of knowing them, you will start to grasp the struggle that they go through every single day that you don't. Maybe if you have a friend who's deaf, you will start to over time. But I guarantee on day one, your guesses at how hard that is aren't even close. Yeah. If you have a friend who's blind, you might be able to guess. You might be able to pretend. Go a day with your eyes shut. See what that's like. But it's not the same as being blind. It's not the same as being deaf. You can't switch it off. They don't get that option. And so for most of us, we're terrible at actually understanding what it's going to be like for that person to go through life. But Jesus does something really cool here. He immediately, on seeing that this guy was deaf, he immediately knew what it was going to be like to gain his hearing. And what did he do? He took him out of the crowd. He's about to get to hear for the first time, and Jesus says, you don't need that noise. Come over here where it's quiet. And then he heals his hearing. Do you see the amount of compassion that goes into that, to think ahead? To realize that if I give this guy his hearing back in the middle of this screaming crowd, that he might actually wish I hadn't.
And he would have lost his hearing right then.
He was deaf from the noise. So Jesus takes him out of the crowd and says, you don't need to hear that as your first moment in this life getting to hear. Why don't you come over here and the first thing you get to hear is my voice.
Wow.
The Creator's voice. Can you imagine that being the first thing you ever heard? You
No.
go your whole life to being an adult and you're deaf. The first thing you hear is Jesus' voice. We don't necessarily realize it, but that's actually true of a lot of people who are born deaf. They end up hearing Jesus' voice when they get to heaven. As they get there and their hearing is restored. And this guy got to have that on earth. I think that's so cool. So cool. But then we have to finish this because we never read the last
It was me.
2 verses.
I was 36.
36 and 37.
And 37?
Oh, no, she'll do 37. You do 36. Sorry, you were just going to read both.
Yeah. Jesus told the crowd not to tell anyone, but the more he told them not to, or the more he told him not.
Then.
Jesus told the crowd not to tell anyone, but the more he told them not to, the more they spread the news.
That's why you never tell them not to.
I thought it said Jesus told that man to
Oh,
not tell anyone, but
yeah,
the
that
more
doesn't
he
work.
told them.
It's like
not-
telling someone not to
the
take
more
the
they
cookies
told
when they're not thinking about it. Then they can't stop
It's
thinking
like telling
about
Seth to stop eating the bacon.
Yeah, and then he goes over and snatches one,
There's
and
bacon?
then she
There's more
taps
backing?
him down.
There was, but Seth ate it all. I'm just kidding.
What?
I'm just kidding. Sorry.
I didn't even get any bread.
All right, sorry. Last verse.
Okay. They were completely amazed and said again and again, "Everything he does is wonderful. He even makes the deaf hear and give speech to those who cannot speak."
Beautiful. That right there, what they're crying out, is actually fulfillment of prophecy from Isaiah. It detailed hundreds of years before this happened that when the Messiah comes, who we find out his name is Jesus, but that was his title, Messiah. When he comes, he will make the deaf hear not just anything, but hear the word of God, and that those who cannot speak will be able to speak. All right. Yes.
So two things. One, I feel like around Christmas time God isn't even mentioned. Like it's just like all about the presents. Hey, look, thank you for the presents, and not thanking God for presents. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for God. And it's just like we would all be dead if it weren't for God. And then
Dead in trespasses and sins.
That's why every time before we open presents at my house, we always read the story.
Yes.
And then
It's
we
awesome.
open the presents.
It's a really good tradition.
and then my tongue when we did pirate, like the two outside go up on my roof.
Yeah.
It's just like
The tongue
it's like
flattens
a
out.
taco.
Flattens out,
Like
kind of makes a
that.
bowl. Yeah. It's interesting to think about your tongue as you talk. It does all these things you don't even
really
think about.
it.
Yes.
Technically, I feel like, because I learned this thing that when deaf people are like born deaf, their tongue is actually tightened, so they can't speak it correctly because of how tightened their tongue
What
is.
if they can
Their tongue gets all
Never
like
heard of this.
very tightened in the back of their mouth, and then they can't say anything because they can't like talk. So it's like it comes out like this. That's how they talk technically. It's because it's so tightened in the back.
I don't know
of
about
their
that.
mouth.
Kinda sad. That means it's
They
dead.
might have underdeveloped muscular control in their tongue
What
because they don't
about
use it as
can't
much.
they like
But
read
I don't know if
people's
they're actually
lips?
born with any sort of deformity in the tongue muscle itself.
Because I was deaf, but when I was born, I was partially deaf, and now I'm like almost fully deaf. But I can
In one
still.
ear or both?
Okay, this ear is fully deaf.
What?
This one is starting to get deaf. So my mom.
Her sister, no joke, just got hearing aids this year, like what, a week and a half ago? But yeah, she's the same way. One ear
So, like,
basically
I do know
gone, the other
sign
one's starting to
language.
go. She got the hearing aids, life-changing moment, man. It was totally worth it.
Yeah,
And they're Bluetooth now, so you can use them as earbuds too.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
So like,
that's so funny.
that's
No,
me.
no joke. There's a mic built in. Like you can actually do the command through the. It's crazy.
Like for me, because I know sign language and I had lots of friends at my school who were deaf, just didn't even know how to do sign language, and I had to sit there. But because they could read my lips, it was like they didn't even know how to do sign language.
They
So
just
I
did lip reading?
sat there. I just sat there and like showed them the motions and like
Sign language is
wrote
actually
it
fun.
out on what it
Yeah, it
means.
is.
They can like
And like pain. This is like pain. So like now they just go around and talk in sign language. But for
Like,
me it was hard because I was a hearing child on my first year. Once I turned 2, this ear just snapped, gone. It was just
That's tough.
broken. So my mom gets on my back all the time about me having the music loud, and it's like it's not my fault. It's not my
It
fault.
does hurt your hearing, even if you don't have much, though. Be careful. All right, we gotta wrap this up.
But hey,
In both of these stories, we have Jesus healing with a word. That's it, just a word. And in both of these stories, we have people who were not, as far as we know, Jews. The second guy, it doesn't specify, he was a deaf Gentile, but he was living in Sidon, a place where a lot of Gentiles were and very few Jews were. So Jesus goes outside of Israel. He sees these two people. These two people both need him. He wasn't there to help. He was there to rest for once, but he still helped. And this kind of paints the picture of Jesus' character. He's on his day off. He's on vacation. Someone needs something. He needs rest too, but he helps anyways. And I think this is a beautiful picture for us. It means when you work hard for the Lord, it's not that you can't have a vacation. It's not that you can't take time off. It's not that you don't need rest magically. You do. You got to take the time off. You got to take the rest. But when you get where you're going, when you shut the door, be ready that someone might cross your path. Your vacation may not have been planned by God. Your time off, your rest, your quiet time may not be at his command. He may actually have other plans. He may stick someone right in your path, right where you were deciding, I'm done. And just to be open like Jesus was, to say, okay, I'll handle one more. I'll help one more. I'll be there for one more. And then I'll rest. Be ready to take in that person right when you're at the end of your rope. Be ready to say yes to someone right when you were ready to start saying no. Be ready, because God may throw you one more. The other side of this is that there was a very strong notion in their day about our group, our family, our people, and all the other people. And this wasn't just the Jews. The Jews did it, but so did everyone else. Everyone was thinking, it's just us, our people. All those other weirdos can handle themselves. And Jesus goes out to these other places and he reveals something that's going to get touched on later. He reveals that when the Jews have had Jesus, when they've all had the chance to hear of him and learn of him and find out that he's the Savior of the world, then the plan is to take Jesus out into the rest of the world and show them that Jesus is the Savior of the world. And it's a reminder to us that even if you do have a responsibility, go tell your family about Jesus, tell your friends about Jesus. There comes a time when you're done. You've gone down the checklist, you've told everyone you're related to, you've told everyone you know well. At that point, go tell the people you don't know well. Go start telling the people you barely know. Go start telling the people you don't even know. And that once you're done with the people you know well, you've got to move on to the people you don't. And so there comes a time in every Christian's life that we become a missionary of sorts. Whether that means going to a whole other country or just getting past your neighborhood. It doesn't matter, but God does have a plan for each of us, and he does have a call on all of us to go and reach other people for him, to go spread the gospel to other people. There is no Christian that was given the job by God to only talk to their family and never talk to anybody else, to only share the gospel with their closest friends and nobody else. God wants you to share with everyone. Just as Jesus started Christianity there in the Jewish communities, as soon as he was done, he went back to heaven, that's immediately what God starts telling him to do. Go out to there, go out to there, go to that place, go to that country, go to that town. And he starts sending them out all over the place. And we're supposed to be continuing that. It wasn't just a in the Bible thing. It wasn't just a back then thing. This is a now. This is an us thing. All right, let's pray. Lord, we thank you for your word. We thank you for what you're teaching us in Mark. Help us to follow not only Jesus' example, but that woman's example as she humbled herself. The crowd's example is they couldn't take a command to stay quiet. They could only share the good news. Lord, may we never listen to our culture as they tell us to be quiet. May we instead always find the courage to share the good news about you. Help us, Lord, as we're taking rest or we're deciding to be done for the day, to always be willing to take one more. To always be willing to help one more person. May we never get into the heart of it's not my job, or I'm not on right now, I'm not ready right now. Help us, Lord, to always be ready. To always be willing to do one more thing for your kingdom. Help us, Lord, as we head back to school this week, whether it's the normal same old we used to have before Thanksgiving and all that, or whether it's something completely different right now. Whatever the case is, Lord, help us to be a witness there for you in that environment, to share you with the people around us. We ask all this in your name. Amen. All right, on. I love you guys. I'm actually going to leave town right now. I'm going to go on vacation.
Woohoo! Didn't it?
Not even kidding. Hannah's going to be here next week to teach. Woohoo! Cool. And I will see you guys on the flip side, past that same break.
What do you want to do?
Because of how hard it was, like, I do a lot.
To keep it
I'm starting to, like, sneeze, like, here, so, like, when I was born, actually, when I was born, I was actually more slur of my words than I was
Joined by another flyer.
once
Yeah,
I was
you'll be near the
Just like
river,
you were young.
you'll be more inland.
No, because once I tackled the two, I started talking normally. My mom had taught me how to talk when I was younger. So I was like, I didn't know how to say full words.
Pretty devastating